They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. People are sounding off on Facebook. I see Gene. Gene just writes, present. Remember when people used to answer the roll that way? I always thought that was weird. And then it changes to here. Maybe that's the fall of Western civilization, is kids answering their teacher, and instead of saying present, they just say here. Maybe it was the beginning of just a little bit of laziness that just infected us all. Who knows? The telephone number, as always, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We do have a great show for you. This is an interesting day. We've had this day planned for a long time on the program. I guess probably 2 weeks ago we had a banner. We had a banner up 2 weeks ago. That was saying grades will be posted and that sort of thing. You guys remember this? Those of you who've been watching the program, by the way, you can do that Facebook or YouTube. And this was just in anticipation of scorecard season. Scorecard season is coming out. It's going to be happening soon. Today, in fact, is the Conduit for Commerce scorecard going to be released. Matter of fact, we're going to be talking with Mr. Josh Waters. He's going to be on the program coming up at 7 o'clock in an hour from now. We kind of blocked off the whole hour for this, to go over the grading, methodology, the bills that were scored, and many of the bills that were scored are obviously the same ones that were a part of the weekly scorecard. Many of you had texted, remember this? Many of you texted into the new number to get the updates, all during the legislative session when the updates were going out. So we're going to be talking with Josh about that coming up at 7:05 this morning, and it's looks fantastic, by the way. It's very easy to understand and figure out, does it grow government? Does it increase dependency on government? Does it spend money we don't have? If it does those things, then you're talking about a growth in the size of government. It's it's the economic defense. It's pretty simple. If it does those things, you vote against it. If it doesn't do those things, just consider voting for it at that point. So we'll talk to Josh tomorrow on the program. Actually, we'll be talking with Senator Tom Cotton at 7:33. So that'll happen as well. So we're really excited about that. Now, we do have an update, and I want to start with this. There was, our dear friend and public servant, Senator Linda Collins. There is an update in her murder investigation, and I don't think we're going to know too much more in the 2-hour duration of the program that we have today, because I believe there's probably going to be a probable cause hearing later today that might give us some more details about what's going on. But KAIT reported back on Friday, this would have been June 14th, and I know it's dominated social media. A lot of people are wondering, asking a lot of questions, and I think that's totally deserved at this point. But there was an arrest made, according to the Randolph County Sheriffs in conjunction with the Arkansas State Police, an arrest of Rebecca Lynn O'Donnell. Sheriff Kevin Bell told Region 8 News that he cannot specify why she considered a suspect because it would interfere with the investigation. And again, so you have this gag order, so I'm just as confused as a lot of you are out there. Bell said he arrested O'Donnell around 4 p.m. June 14th after a traffic stop. Officials said that criminal charges are pending. So if you arrest someone, you have to charge them, right? Isn't that how it works? We don't know what the charges are, but if you arrest someone, I think you have to. I'm not an attorney, but I think you have to charge them. And then Sheriff Bell said that the probable cause hearing would likely be on Monday. And here's a quote. Listen to this quote. Quote, "The investigation is presently at a critical juncture, and no further information will be released at this hour until authorities are confident it will not compromise the integrity of the criminal case." So, and upon that, you have a statement released by Ken Yang, who is, again, acting as the family spokesperson because he was Linda's spokesperson. This evening, our family received news that an arrest was made in connection to the ongoing investigation. We are sickened and upset that someone so close to Linda, Becky is what she went by, and by all accounts, they were friends. But again, we don't have the charges yet either. Quote, "We are sickened and upset that someone so close to Linda would be involved in such a terrible, heartless crime. The family is very confident that the Randolph County Sheriff's Department and the Arkansas State Police will continue to work diligently to bring this case to justice. We would like to thank everyone for the continued prayers and thoughts for our family during this difficult time. Family of Linda Collins versus Ken Yang, or via Ken Yang." So, that's what we know for sure right now. That's the status of things for sure at this moment, and I will update you as soon as I know something different, folks. What Ken said in his statement there, I think, is the best thing to do, is to continue to pray for the family. I went to the visitation, and it was it was something. The grief there was just, it was the whole community, the family, and it's just heartbreaking situation. So please continue to pray for the family, because again, is whatever loss that we feel, and knowing Linda personally, or having a friendship, or maybe just knowing her as a public servant, whatever loss you feel there, there's nothing compared to what the family is feeling at this moment. And again, I'm sick of the tragedy. It just keeps getting worse. So, telephone number 870-275-9799. What we're going to do is going to stop. We're going to reset. We're going to take a break. And then when we come back, I want to tell you about a little national news. I haven't heard this anywhere, when it comes to, aside from like internet sites. I haven't really heard this reported anywhere else. It has to do with the DNC and who they actually turned their servers over to when it came time for Russian hacking. When it was part of the investigation. You remember this, right, Joe? All right, so we're going to take a break, going to reset, and when we come back, I want to get to that, as well as a whole lot of other stuff, and Mr. Josh Waters coming up at the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment. Over at Facebook.com/Conduit News and the YouTube channel, Conduit News on YouTube. Click the subscribe button and the little bell to receive notifications. Welcome back to the program this morning. Congressman Rick Crawford back with us. Rick, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. It's, again, always great to have you on the program. I'd love to start, if you don't mind, just kind of talking about where we are right now with the corrupt, apparently corrupt higher-ups in the Department of Justice and FBI during the Obama administration. And, we still have Andrew McCabe and others. They're going out. They're making these statements. They're trying to capitalize on what President Trump said about how he would listen to people, foreign governments and that sort of thing. And I'm just thinking, when in the world are we going to get justice when these people who, did what they did, they committed crimes against this country, in my opinion? What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well,
hey, folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith. 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. You know, for all of our listeners, if you ever miss the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your number one source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Joe, I have a question to ask you. Did you get your father anything for Father's Day? Did you call him? You did. That's good. That's a good thing. I guess this is my second Father's Day of actually being a father. And so we had a good time. And then, of course, my verse for this morning when I woke up, and if you have that YouVersion Bible app, they're the ones that give you the verse. But, you know, I always try to read past whatever the verse is. Just what? Joe, what are you shaking your head for? Anyway, you seem skeptical. No. Anyway, you're looking at the meme of the day. I see. Okay. And anyway, he says, shaking your head again. What are you doing? Is that how you read? Anyway, so it was in Luke 11 this morning, and it had to do with for everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be open. And then it says this about gives an analogy here. Jesus has given an analogy here of a father. What father among you, if his son asks for a fish, will instead give him a serpent? Or if he asks for an egg, will give him a scorpion? Now, this is my favorite part. And I know this is weird, but it's certainly it gives you a comment on the state of man apart from God. If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? Anyway, again, that's in Luke chapter 11, verse 10 and 11. 870-275-9799. All right, so we have a little bit of a interesting situation here out of, well, this is from Zero Hedge. Now, I had no idea about this. I mean, I guess we had a little bit of, there's a little bit of skepticism that's been going around with the Mueller report back when it was discovered that the Mueller report actually said, as alleged, the Russians hacked the Democrat National Committee. So the Mueller report it didn't seem that the Mueller report actually investigated whether or not the Russians actually hacked the Democrats. Seems to me that that was an assumption that they took as truth, and then they went and pursued the rest of the investigation. It's an odd assumption to make, considering Bob Mueller was tasked with discovering something about, the Russians. I mean, that was the main point. But he takes that one as alleged, and that's in the document. That's in the Mueller report as alleged. Because, you see, the interesting thing is, if the Russians did not hack the DNC, or if there's evidence to suggest otherwise, then it becomes, a lot of it just kind of unravels rather quickly, wouldn't you think? So, U.S. government, Zero Hedge, which, by the way, I believe is on the Pinterest block list. We know this now thanks to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. The U.S. government's entire Russia DNC hacking narrative apparently is based on a redacted draft of a CrowdStrike report, and that CrowdStrike report was paid for by the Democrats. The Democrats paid an independent contractor to look over their servers, to analyze them, and to discover what happened. Does that sound familiar to anyone out there? The Democrats paying CrowdStrike to research their servers. The CrowdStrike company then produces a document, and the Democrats produce that document to the government, and the government takes it as gospel. Does that sound familiar to anybody out there in light of the DNC and Hillary paying a company to then pay a British spy to compile a phony dossier? Then they get the report back, and then they submit the dossier to get a FISA warrant to spy on Trump campaign officials, because the FISA court takes a political document that's presented to them by the FBI as gospel. Does that sound like this situation at all? I'm just seeing the similarities here. CrowdStrike's report made its way into a joint FBI-DHS report on a Russians' grisly step, which concluded Russia hacked the DNC servers. At the time, CrowdStrike's claim drew much scrutiny from cybersecurity experts, according to a former Breitbart reporter, Lee Stranahan. Now, thanks to a new court filing, so we have official documents here, a new court filing. There's by Roger Stone, or at least it was a request by Roger Stone, Trump advisor. He said, "Hey, I'd like to see the full CrowdStrike analysis, so we can find out what's really going on here." And the response that Roger Stone gets back, we find out that the U.S. government was given a redacted version of the report marked as draft. So they don't even have the entire report. And again, this was also reported by Conservative Treehouse. What makes the whole thing even more strange or hokey is a footnote admitting that, quote, counsel for the DNC and the DCCC informed the government that they are the last version of the report produced. You can see here the highlighted portions. Can you throw this up on the screen, Joe, so we can see this? This is I want people to see the factual background photo here. Copies of these reports were subsequently produced voluntarily to the government by counsel for the DNC and the DCCC. At the time of the voluntary production, counsel for the DNC told the government that the redacted material concerned steps taken to remediate the attack and to harden the DNC and the DCCC systems against future attacks. So they're saying that the redactions in this not even final report, the redactions are to prevent anybody from discovering how they're now going to strengthen their servers to prevent the Russians from hacking their accounts again. Here's the footnote at the very bottom. Take a look at this. Although the reports produced to the defendant are marked draft, counsel for the DNC and DCCC informed the government that they are the last version of the report produced. So to be clear here, we read the entire Russian narrative that Russia attacked or hacked the DNC is based on a redacted draft of a report which CrowdStrike appears not to have ever even finalized. Strange. Very strange. Conservative Treehouse, quote, "This means the FBI and DOJ and all of the downstream claims by the intelligence apparatus, including the December 2016 Joint Analysis Report, the January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, all the way to the Weissman/Mueller report, and the continued claims therein were based on the official intelligence agencies of the U.S. government and the U.S. Department of Justice taking the word of a hired contractor for the Democratic Party, despite their inability to examine the server and or actually see an unredacted technical forensic report from the investigating contractor." And you understand, folks, if the Russians didn't hack the DNC, if that didn't happen, which is taken as gospel, that is something, that's a fact that is, as you know, is set in stone. The media is, as far as the media is concerned, is that the sky is blue. The sky is blue, and it's obvious that the Russians hacked the DNC. If that's not true, though, things begin to unravel rather quickly, don't they? The entire apparatus of the U.S. government just took their word for it. A paid contractor by the Democratic Party. The exact same thing that happened with the Steele dossier, the FISA court, and the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton. The exact same thing. They used the claim therein as an official position, CrowdStrike. They were paid. You know, around here in Arkansas, we know what happens when you hire consultants. Oftentimes, the legislature will hire consultants to give themselves political cover because, well, this is what the experts recommended. Well, you're paying the consultant to give you the result that you really want politically, to pursue the policies that you've already told them you want to pursue. Most of the time, it's laid out in the contracts themselves. This is the way it works. And so here we have a situation where the Democrat Party is going to pay CrowdStrike to formulate a report that says what they want it to say. Is the allegation, anyway. They used the claim as an official position, which led to a subsequent government claim in court of absolute certainty that Russia hacked the DNC. Think about that for a minute. Contractor, they're and all of these all that stuff about Hillary Clinton on the debate stage. Remember, 17 intelligence agencies. That was all bogus. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment. Let me know what you think. Over at facebook.com/Conduit News and the YouTube channel, Conduit News on YouTube. Click the subscribe button and the little bell to receive notifications. Welcome back to the program this morning. Congressman Rick Crawford back with us. Rick, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. It's, again, always great to have you on the program. I'd love to start, if you don't mind, just kind of talking about where we are right now with the corrupt, apparently corrupt higher-ups in the Department of Justice and FBI during the Obama administration. And, you know, we still have Andrew McCabe and others. They're going out. They're making these statements. They're trying to capitalize on what President Trump said about how he would listen to people, you know, foreign governments and that sort of thing. And I'm just thinking, when in the world are we going to get justice when these people who, you know, did what they did, they committed crimes against this country, in my opinion? What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, you know, you've pretty well summarized it there, and it's a good question. When are we going to see justice done? And yesterday I was accosted in the Capitol by a reporter and asked about the president's comments about receiving quote-unquote dirt from foreign nations, what he called the FBI. Well, how about this? How about a candidate that called the FBI beforehand and asked for assistance on their campaign, and there are people in the FBI and the DOJ that assisted willingly. I mean, so we got, you know, the media outrage over something like this is ridiculous. And that's how they escape scrutiny, quite frankly, is because the media carry the water for these bad actors in the FBI and the DOJ. And I would just want to clarify that the FBI and DOJ are they're good people. They've got bad leadership. There's some bad leadership. That cabal in Washington that's been calling the shots now for several years. We just had an open hearing in the Intelligence Committee, and there were two of the witnesses. You know, the majority party calls their witnesses, and then we get to call one. And they had two witnesses there, and one of them, neither one of them had read the Steele dossier, but both of them were there to critique it. And in a manner of speaking, and they acknowledged that, well, they hadn't actually read it. And one of them had worked for both Mueller and Comey in his 24-year career in the FBI. So, you know, how in the world are you supposed to get objective material or objective testimony from a witness like that? And this is what we continue to see in Washington is, you know, these committee chairmen in various committees that have got memorandums of understanding between the committees to cooperate together to damage the president in any.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So we got your meme of the day coming up here a little over an hour, so you can check out past memes of the day, facebook.com/Conduit News, or the Twitter page @Conduit News. Feel free to do that. Joe is look. If you want to submit one, by the way, you guys can do it yourselves, and we'll give you guys credit for sending us the meme, give you a shout out, and we would love that. Comedy is comedy. You know what I'm saying? And the right is really good at it when it comes to making political jokes and memes, in particular. And I also want to remind you, we got Josh Waters coming up at the top of the next hour. He's going to be talking about the Conduit scorecard. Conduit for Commerce out with their scorecard of this past legislative session. We've been doing these impression of the sessions. You guys understand. We've had, I can't even remember how many legislators at this point. But we've interviewed a lot of them, asking them, questions and everything else. And that's going to be a really good, I think that's going to be a really good complement to the scorecard, specific bills. Did government grow or shrink and that sort of thing? We'll be talking with Josh coming up at the top of the hour on that. Also, the Conduit for Commerce co-founders, Joe Maynard and Brenda Vassar-Taylor, I understand they're going to be on with Dave Ellswick on 101.1 The Answer out of Little Rock from 3 to 5 p.m. today. So you don't want to miss that. Those segments are always fantastic and very entertaining. And so we'll be, a matter of fact, they'll be on the program tomorrow as well, I'm told. So we also have that. So definitely want to stay tuned and, again, be watching for the release of the scorecard because it's happening. The number 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the conversation today. Speaking of memeing and speaking of comedy, actress, I thought she was a comedian. Isn't Tiffany Haddish a comedian? She's fairly, from what I can tell, she's fairly new onto the Hollywood scene, right? But this is fascinating to me how many leftists feel like they have to go out of their way to make some sort of political comment about either of Alabama's abortion law or Georgia's abortion law. And, at first it was Alyssa Milano, and it was the, going on a sex strike. I'm not even sure if that's still a thing, if she's, if the sex strike continues. I would assume she's getting, more and more angry. Anyway, headline here, actress Tiffany Haddish cancels comedy show to protest Georgia's heartbeat abortion law. So she had a show where she was going to, she is a comedian. She had a stand-up show where she was going to be in Atlanta. And, which by the way, this is ridiculous. You're making people who, most people in cities are Democrats anyway. Most people in major cities like Atlanta, they're not going to be voting for a lot of Republicans. And so you're making people who disagree, potentially, with more pro-life laws protecting the unborn, you're making them suffer, and they probably already bought tickets to the thing. So that's point number one here. That's pretty frustrating. She said this, quote, "After much deliberation, I am postponing my upcoming show in Atlanta. I love the state of Georgia, but I need to stand with women until they withdraw Measure HB 481. I cannot, in good faith, perform there." Interesting. What do you guys think about this? This all came because Governor Brian Kemp, an actual conservative, decided to sign the Living Infants Fairness and Equality Act, an acronym for the word life, last month. And the law is going to go into effect next year, January 1st, 2020. And we have, this is just add Tiffany Haddish now to the long list of people who are in Hollywood that are once again demonstrating that their values and sentiments and the people that control them and the industry that funds the movies and the entertainment ventures that are made, they absolutely are completely on another planet from the rest of America. On a complete different world. They have a different world view, right? We're, and I really think this. I wonder if you could think I wonder if you could compare passion for issues. And which one would match up against the other. For example, most conservatives' number one issue is life, protecting it, and abortion. And I would think most leftists' number one issue now, that really gets them jazzed up, that really can send them into a panic, that what I guess is sacred, is climate change. I think those two. It's just a guess here. I know what the right's number one issue is. Now, the right's problem is obviously that we are not as unified on economic issues and things like that, and that's a big deal. But with abortion, it's just so obvious. You know what I mean? It's a life or death issue. Like, we need you to. We can debate the tax policy and the economic issues later. I think economic freedom is a prerequisite to other freedoms, but we got to have you alive in order, and you need to grow up in order to debate what you want tax policy to be. You know what I mean? You have to have life, or you can't have anything. And that's why it's so black and white. You know, that's why it's so basic. On the other side, I think their number one issue now is climate change, because they literally are terrified of death. They're absolutely terrified to die. And so you have these people, you know, using this Chicken Little mentality on them. Folks, back in 2015, ABC News, I saw this because not only did Rush cover it, but as well as Mediaite chronicled this, I believe, where they have this ABC News special on ClimateGate, and was it in 2015 or was it from 2009? I think it was from 2009, where they said by 2015 they painted this bleak picture. They had these millennials talking about how they can't find food because of climate change, and it was like an advertisement leading up to this special that ABC ran on their network. And there are countless people out there that really believe. They never take stock that these predictions never come true. I mean, if you look at climate change or global warming or whatever they want to call it now, if you look at it from any measured or objective account of the amount of reporting that's been done over the last 30, 40 years, it is nothing but fear-mongering. The dates that they set never, the stuff they say is going to happen never happens. And so, but there are people, millennials especially, that believe, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that, what did she say? We have 12 years left? And people said, and then she backtracked on it. She did backtrack on it. But she said that you'd have to have a brain the size of a sponge to have believed that. She was just joking. The problem is there was polling done before she backtracked where a majority of Democrats agreed with her. Then that's a problem, because everybody thought she was serious, you know, because she was serious. She's just backtracking because she knows that she wants to have a political career for the next 30 years, and in 12 years' time, she's going to look really stupid. That's what that was. But yeah, they get really excited about climate change. That they think that this is, you know, they hear people say the science is settled, and they know nothing about science at all. Science is never settled. If you know anything about science, there's always the possibility that you have it wrong, and there's other data out there that might come in. And in the case of the climate scientist, I mean, just Google East Anglia. Google East Anglia University. You remember the emails, the secret emails that got leaked, that exposed the scientific research as complete frauds. I mean, exposed the scientists as complete frauds because they're just coming up with these dire predictions using, you know, science, end quote, to fund their next research project because they want to get money. Anyway, so Alyssa Milano, Tiffany Haddish, they are very upset with the abortion bills, very upset with Georgia, very upset with Alabama. The reason this made my list today, though, is because I have consistently said for a while now, the left is becoming anti-comedy, and this proves my point. And it's a shame. It really is. And it's what happens when the left starts to dislike the freedom of speech. I mean, there was a time in this country where you could be on the left and be on the right, and comedians on the left, and most of them were on the left, the ones that got famous anyway, they agree with two things: that they have a right to say what they want to say, and that they're an American and have a right to be left alone, meaning, you know, they have a right to privacy. All that's out the window now. Now the left says, no, well, speech needs to be regulated, and I don't mind a big government. I don't mind having an Alexa in my house. I don't mind these massive surveillance programs because I've got nothing to hide. If you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to worry about? And so now that's their mentality. It's very odd. As Americans on both sides of the aisle, we used to be unified in those two things. I'm an American, I have a right to be left alone, and I have a right to say what I want to say. Not so much anymore. And that's why it is extremely ironic that a comedian who is there to make people laugh is now canceling the show, punishing a lot of her fans that are probably leftists themselves. Not all of them, but some. A good portion, I would bet a majority. Because of a law that many of them don't support. It's ridiculous. And it just goes to show that the left thinks that they are... No, let me say this. It goes to show that these entertainers overvalue themselves in their contribution to society. I mean, that's really what it is. They have this heightened view that because they're famous, their opinion somehow matters more. Now, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't want people who do get fame to be better role models and everything else. And I get that's probably where it comes from. But I just want you to understand, we have this misguided notion that if you're famous, you're somehow smart. That's not necessarily true. If you're famous, you must know things. You must be an affluent person, and that's not the case. If you're an entertainer, you're there to entertain. Matter of fact, Tiffany Haddish, Alyssa Milano, all these celebrities, all of you people out there, and I love the Avengers movies. I love the Marvel movies. I think it's one of the most incredible things. But Chris Evans, Captain America, you guys don't have a market for what you do if the rest of this country is having to run around worrying about how they're going to feed themselves tomorrow, or running around worrying about how they're going to put a roof over their head. The economic reality is people study the arts and can actually make advancements and make careers for themselves in the arts well after we have figured out a way to consistently dispose of our waste and drink clean water. And that's the reality of the situation. And that's why it's such and yet we have these people who are now becoming more socialists that want to take the money out of those that makes the society and the world turn in terms of its current technological achievements and quality of life, standard of living, and they want to now say that they somehow know more when what they do for a living wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the capitalists who are investing, creating jobs, giving people the disposable income to go spend $20 on a movie ticket to watch some guy, be a superhero and take them to another place for 2.5 hours. The perspective from these entertainers is totally backwards when you look at the economic realities of the situation. We're going to take a break. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Coming up top of the hour, Josh Waters for the full hour. We're going to go over the Conduit scorecard. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
I'm really kind of sick of it. I just think they ought to go ahead and impeach the president. Go ahead and do it. Put your cards on the table and see what happens. Because this backhanded way of doing it, that they're basically doing an impeachment inquiry right now through all of these committee hearings that they do in the intelligence and oversight government, in judiciary and financial services. Just go ahead and do it. If you're that convinced, and then let the American people decide how they feel about it.
Do you think they're doing that to appease the radical, the far left movements of their party? Because, Nancy
Absolutely.
is afraid of AOC.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. This is a dirty little secret that, the Democrats, in middle America don't want to acknowledge, and that is that AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib are not majority makers. Those seats were Democrats.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Impeachment. They say, Maxine, don't say impeachment. I say impeachment. 870-275-9799. The Daily Wire reporting that the FBI director, the former, you could say disgraced FBI director, Andrew McCabe, says now is the time to try to impeach Trump. Now, real quick, on Friday, we had Congressman Rick Crawford on the program, who's on the permanent select, I can't ever say this, the Permanent House Select Committee on Intelligence. I think is how you say it. And so he knows, a ton of stuff, gets classified information, and, it's always great to talk to him. So, we've been talking about this Mueller report, Russia, DOJ, corruption, all of this stuff for a long time now. For months now, we've been talking about it. Matter of fact, we talked to Rick about this back when in the 2016 election, back when James Comey came out and oddly didn't charge Hillary but said bad things about her. So this has been ongoing for a while. Matter of fact, if you go back and listen to the YouTube channel, should have a playlist of all of Rick's videos, and you go back and listen to them all. It'd be an interesting exercise. But he said on Friday that he had made his observation was that you haven't heard a lot from James Comey as of late. That you hadn't heard a lot from him. Notice he's kind of gone quiet, and he had, because I was asking him specifically about McCabe, because McCabe recently came out and said that in the George Snuffleupagus interview with Donald Trump, when Trump said that he would listen to anybody, even if they were a foreign power, he would listen to them and maybe call the FBI. He's not going to not listen to somebody. And the left, of course, goes crazy. I'm like, yes, he's a foreign agent. And this is from the left that it's always about. Historically, the left is always like, well, we need to be able to listen. We don't want to be mean, unless it's Trump. And then, of course, they just hate him so much personally that, there's nothing that defines hypocrisy better than a Democrat while Donald Trump is president of the United States. Disgraced former FBI Director Andrew McCabe says now is the time to try to impeach Trump. Interesting. After a leading question from CNN host Chris Cuomo, the Daily Wire's Ash Scow reports, the fired FBI Director Andrew McCabe said now is absolutely the time to start impeachment proceedings against President Trump. Oh, by the way, city of Israel unveiled a new, the country of Israel unveiled a new residential suburb called Trump Heights in the Golan Heights. McCabe made the statement after being asked by Cuomo, do you believe that an impeachment inquiry is warranted based on what you understand and what has come out of the Mueller report? McCabe, who wrote in a memoir trashing Trump and defended the FBI, immediately agreed, saying, oh, absolutely. The Hill reported that McCabe insisted Special Counsel Robert Mueller's final report provide enough evidence to impeach Trump, even though the report found no evidence of collusion and made no determinations regarding obstruction of justice. Democrats have fixated on the obstruction claims, moving the goalposts, even though Mueller's investigation was supposed to be a counterintelligence investigation, which is done on behalf of the president and therefore cannot be obstructed by the president. Further, since there was no underlying crime, only partisans can argue that Trump was obstructing rather than protesting the false accusations against him. Quote, I think we are clearly there with the results of the special counsel team, McCabe said. There are so many witnesses who could provide important essential testimony to Congress that can only be done in the scope of an impeachment inquiry, meaning we want to go through and basically have all the grand jury testimony done in public. That's what that means. And that's probably why they wanted the full unredacted. Well, they were asking Attorney General Barr to break the law by providing sealed grand jury testimony to the committee. They want that information so that they can, if they want, they can continue doing this mock impeachment without actually doing the impeachment. They would love to do that. You understand that, right? They would love to just have hearing after hearing after hearing and subpoena after subpoena after subpoena of, people who have already been interviewed by Robert Mueller. That's why they wanted the report so bad, because of 2020 and the election. And they want that just ongoing, right? Constantly. It seems to me that the deep state, which is real, and the Democrat Party, they know that Donald Trump has everything on them to really bring them down. I mean, the only question at this point is, can Trump withstand? I think what I mean by this is they have all the information. They know who the bad actors were. They know of the crimes that were committed by the Democrats to use the intelligence apparatus to spy on the campaign, to do things that, that Richard Nixon never even dreamed of doing. They have that all. They have it all, every bit of it. And so the Democrats, I think, know this. And the question is, will Trump be able to survive the media accusations that he's a banana republic dictator that's using the government to go after his political opponents? Because the media, for the most part, have treated the investigation like it was legitimate the whole time, when in fact it wasn't. Robert Mueller didn't have evidence of the crime from the day he started. All he had was the Russian dossier, which was phony. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. And what the Democrats are hoping to do is to continue pushing a false narrative. They have the entire media on their side for the most part, most of the media. They continue to push this narrative that Trump is a Russian KGB agent, also a member of the KKK, also a secret agent to Saudi Arabia, bowing, like a secret, loyal subject of King Salman or Prince Salman. And they're going to keep pushing this narrative with the hopes that, knowing that Trump's going to unveil everything. He's got the FISA warrant, declassify everything. And the Democrats' only hope is that the American people just say, well, everybody's corrupt, so what's the difference? There's no difference. You know what I mean? And just, cave way to voter apathy. I think that's what their goal is at this point. But by the way, the Saudi Arabia thing driving me nuts right now. They're all talking. There are war drums beating with Iran and everything else, and the Associated Press reports the talking points are, in Saudi Arabia, says that they don't need to focus on murdered journalist Kamal Khashoggi, and instead focus on their enemy Iran. And I thought, wow, they had anytime the mainstream media mentions Saudi Arabia and bin Salman, they have to mention Khashoggi. They have to remind you, murdered journalist Khashoggi. I think we're using the term journalist a little loosely. Something tells me that if somebody reported on my death, for example, they would say right-wing radio host. I don't think the mainstream press would ever say journalist. In that sense, Khashoggi is a Muslim Brotherhood activist that was writing blog posts for the Washington Post and wasn't murdered until the Washington Post decided to start posting and translating his articles from Arabic to English, and that's when he was killed. We'll take it. Or no, maybe it's reversed. Maybe posting them in Arabic. I don't know. One or the other. They did that, and then he was dead in like 3 weeks. Back in a minute.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
That seats regardless of who ran. That wasn't going to change. There was no net effect to electing those three individuals with regard to the makeup of the Democrats in Congress. That wasn't going to have an impact because that was not a net change there. What this does is puts pressure on people like Daniel Lipinski in Illinois, Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania, Kurt Schrader in Oregon, Colin Peterson in Minnesota. Those are the majority makers. It's people like that who can win in marginal districts or even R-plus districts, and they're having to go home to their people and explain why their speaker has become a socialist. And the reason she's done it is because she's trying to get out in front of these clowns and show that she's the preeminent Democrat in America, and nobody's going to out Pelosi. So she's getting out in front of them to make sure that she's giving the appearance that she's actually driving this ship. What she's doing is she's driving this ship into an iceberg.
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think the Republicans' chances of retaking the House in 2020 go up exponentially, especially if they impeach the president, which, I mean, do you think that they're eventually going to do that? I mean, I think that Nancy knows that would be a net loss, though, because the American people don't support impeachment according to the polls.
Well, this is why they're doing what they're doing, because she knows that she can't impeach because that's a loser. So what they're going to do is harangue the administration with subpoena requests and do all the things that you would do in an impeachment without actually declaring an impeachment. So this is sort of a somewhat of a political Cold War, an impeachment Cold War, if you will. And they're doing all these little backdoor maneuvers to do what they would do in an impeachment proceeding, but just not call it an impeachment proceeding. This way they get away with doing it without actually doing it. So, I mean, I would say you just have the courage of your conviction, do it, and let the American people decide, because I guarantee you that dog won't hunt.
Mm-hmm. We've been waiting on Inspector General Horowitz's report for a while. It was supposed to be out sometime this month, and because, according to reports, there's new information that's been given to the Inspector General, and now the report's going to be delayed. You have any idea what that new information is and when we can expect that report?
Well, I can tell you it has been reported that there are a number of findings that he conducted over the last 30 days, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 IG inspections, individuals within the FBI and the DOJ, and it's amazing what they found. Okay, so you had a guy running basically an FBI employee running a service garage in the FBI parking garage where he was doing maintenance on FBI agents' cars, I guess, right? You had, one woman that was, I don't know if she was muling pot or what the deal was, but this was an FBI employee, DOJ employee. I don't know if she was an agent, but she was an employee of one of those two agencies. And they cover all this stuff up. There were 6 separate incidents, and it's these type of kind of low-level, not necessarily threatening national security, but certainly a gross breach of conduct and a gross misuse of taxpayer dollars. And yet they've covered that up. And so that's an indication of kind of what's going on there. That's in Washington, by the way. It's not as though we've got FBI agents in Jonesboro running some kind of scam or something like that, right? No, this is all coming out of Washington. So those 6 individuals, that came to light, but there's more, and there's so much more, and it's so much deeper than that, and so much more dangerous than, changing somebody's oil in the FBI garage, that this got to be turned over to the new investigator, the U.S. attorney from Connecticut, and this is a guy that's going to get to the bottom of it.
Yes.
And that's what's got him afraid. This has got people. You haven't heard a heck of a lot from Comey in the last couple of weeks. He's kept relatively quiet, and he had been getting out there on Twitter quite a bit, trying to make noise. And then McCabe is in the crosshairs. Obviously, you've got Peter Strzok and his paramour, Page, and a laundry list of other bad actors in the FBI and the DOJ. if we don't clean that mess up and trace it back to how this whole thing was, the genesis of this, which is the Hillary campaign, the DNC, contracting with Coey Perkins Law Firm, contracting with Fusion GPS to hire Christopher Steele, and oh, by the way, Nellie Orr was under contract with Fusion GPS, who happened to be married to Bruce Orr, one of the top executives in.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is hour number 2. Happy Monday to everybody out there. You're listening to the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, or watching it on YouTube, Facebook.com, ConduitNews.com. We've been teasing this for a little while now. Scorecard season is here. Scorecard season is upon us. You're going to start seeing different scorecards coming out in the next few months, ranking legislators and that sort of thing. Conduit for Commerce has put a lot of work and puts a lot of work into reporting back to the people, essentially. Hey, this is how your legislator voted, or this is the bills that were scored. There is, of course, economic freedom filter, and I'm going to go over that here in just a minute. But before, I want to say hello. We have back with us friend Josh Waters. Josh, how are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Paul. I'm doing good. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, sir. It's great. Always great to talk to you, Josh. So what can you tell us about this scorecard off the bat?
Well, it is here. The Conduit scorecard, the much-anticipated Conduit scorecard, is officially out. And so I'm excited to join you this morning and just kind of dive into it and kind of explain it, what the methodology was. You already mentioned the economic freedom filter. And at the end of the day, how does a person's legislator fare on these economic freedom filter issues with their own voting records? Because that's what this scorecard is, Paul. It's the legislator's voting records applied to the economic freedom filter from Conduit for Commerce, and then their score is based on that voting record.
So the goal here, more economic freedom for all Arkansans. And, I mean, we were following this. We talked about this many times during the session, which, gosh, it seems like it was a long time ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. Legislation during the session is reviewed and analyzed by Conduit for Action. And based on those recommendations, Conduit for Commerce has drafted this legislative scorecard. Bills are included into the scorecard by using the economic freedom filter. So let's go over the economic freedom filter first, Josh. Number one, what's number one?
Yeah, the economic freedom filter looks at, all the bills during the session. We went over it each week, Paul, and this is the method that's applied. So one, does a bill increase or decrease the size and scope of government? 2, does a bill increase or decrease dependency on government? 3, does it spend money we do not have? And 4, does it increase or decrease transparency in government? If a bill is a big, impactful bill and fits into one of those categories, very likely it's included in this scorecard for scoring. So CFC obviously is supporting bills that decrease the size and scope of government, decrease dependency on government, and increase transparency in government, and then save money. And then they would oppose the opposite. If a bill increases government, if it increases dependency on government, if it decreases transparency in government, Conduit for Commerce has opposed those bills.
Yeah. That fourth one is new, increase or decreases transparency in government. I mean, Josh, obviously I think that's just because of the events that have occurred over the last several years, the apparent corruption that exists. So, the people really need more. That we need to know more of what's going on down there, right?
Well, absolutely. If you don't know what's going on, it's hard to really know if 1, 2, or 3 apply.
Yeah.
If something's not transparent, if we don't know what the impact is to the taxpayer, we don't know if it increases or decreases the size and scope of government or dependency on government.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have the most transparent government possible. And remember, transparencies for people, transparencies for the government, privacies for the people.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's a very important metric.
Matter of fact, that's what Doug House said on the floor of the House of Representatives. Okay, all right, so methodology. People may want to know how the scoring happens. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, I think the most basic way to understand the scoring this year on the scorecard is think back to grade school. You got, a homework assignment might be worth 6 or 7 points. If you get 6 questions right, you get a 6 out of 6, 100%. Maybe you have a quiz, that's worth 50 points because it's a much bigger project. And you have a test, maybe 100 points. At the end of the day, the individual scores are a percentage. The amount of points a legislator receives based on their voting record, and then the amount of total possible points. So let's break it down like this, Paul. Let's say there's a bill, and it's received a weight of 6 because it's kind of middle of the road. Okay, the bills with a lot greater impact, a lot bigger price tag will weight a lot higher, and those with less impact will weight lower. And all that information is in the scorecard. So let's say a bill gets a 6, okay, and Conduit for Commerce thinks this is a good bill, a 4 position is issued. If the legislator then votes yes on that bill, they get a 6 out of 6. They're at 100%. Now, if they vote no on that bill or vote present or don't vote, then that's the opposite position that CFC is taking. So they don't get any points on that bill. And as you go through each and every one of these bills, you start to really see, the cream of the crop rise to the top. So the overall percentage score is what the rankings are dependent on. We'll see that here in a minute, I know, and as we look at individual legislative scores. But pretty simple, kind of like going back to grade school.
Very much so.
70%, 80%, 90%.
And I think it's a good deal that you put in here. For example, a $300 million tax increase bill will be weighted much greater than a $1 million tax cut. That's that's kind of, I don't know, that I like the example, but it's not too far off from the reality of what happened in terms of proposed bills and that sort of thing. Now, real quick, before we go any further, can you address committee votes? Were there any committee votes scored, and what was the logic there?
Yes, so there were some committee votes scored, Paul, and as everyone knows who follows what goes on down at the Marble Palace, bills can live and die in committee. And a lot of times we don't know what a committee vote is because they don't take roll calls unless someone specifically asks for it. But there were some bills that were flagged that did have committee votes, and they were included here. But the really good thing about this scorecard, Paul, is if you're maybe not on one of those committees, you're not impacted in any way whatsoever. You could still get 100% on this scorecard even if you weren't on one of these committees. So the committee votes work much the same way. If a bill is in a committee and there's a vote, let's say a House committee, those 20 members are going to have more opportunities to improve their score. And so let's say a bill is weighted a 10, and they're in that committee, and the position is 4, and then they voted against, or they didn't vote, or they voted present. They're going to get 0 out of 10 on that. Their total possible points is increased by 10, but their total gain points stays at a 0. Whereas if they voted yes, they get 10 out of 10 points, and their score is going to go up.
Yeah.
So what's good about that is it's completely comparable. All the percentage scores are completely comparable regardless of what committee a member's on. But it's a way to really capture the best and truest picture of the full voting record of a legislator.
Yeah. We're talking with Josh Waters. We're going over the newly released Conduit scorecard. This is a reflection of what happened in the 92nd General Assembly. Again, the economic freedom filter primarily deals with bigger government versus smaller government, and government needs to be smaller. And in order to do that, you got to vote against bills that are going to grow it. Let's talk about awards. So the Calvin Coolidge Awards. President Calvin Coolidge, he's one of the best presidents this country's ever had. He is a very quotable president, by the way. He certainly understood the nature of the beast, the pitfalls of big government, the benefits of limited government and transparency. So tell us a little bit about the awards. I see here we have a few legislators who are receiving Calvin Coolidge Awards. We have state representatives Dan Sullivan, Austin McCullum, Clint Penzo, Grant Hodges, Marsh Davis, Robin Lundstrom, Josh Miller, Rick Beck, Mickey Gates, Justin Gonzalez, Fran Kavanaugh, Mark Lowry, Nelda Speaks, John Payton, and Richard Womack. Over on the Senate, just one, Senator Trent Garner. What can you tell us about about their scores here? We'll get to their individual scores here in a minute.
Yeah. So the Calvin Coolidge Awards, those are kind of the cream of the crop, if you will, in Arkansas, the top fiscal conservative legislators. And, Paul, there's a lot of talk because you're not going to get everyone to agree with you 100% on anything, right? And so,
right.
As I'm a Republican, you always hear kind of the Ronald Reagan rule. If you agree with me kind of 80% of the time, we can be friends, work together. So that's just what Conduit for Commerce did. They applied an 80% rule. If a legislator scored 80% or higher, they received the Calvin Coolidge Award. And you just read off those in the House and then the one member in the Senate, Senator Trent Garner. But that's what it came down to. If they scored 80% or above, they're a recipient of the Calvin Coolidge Award. And really, they stand out among all the legislators, the top fiscal conservatives in the state.
Wow. Interesting. I don't know how you can argue with the 80% rule. That seems normal. Let's talk about the Senate, though, for a second. I mean, I read a long list of House members, only one Senate member. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, the Senate this session, it was a really mixed bag. And overall, there's only one senator that scored above 80%, Senator Trent Garner. He had an 87.7%. But as you look at the bills, Paul, it was really mixed. A legislator, they may have voted for one or two of the tax increase bills. And because, like we talked about, because those are such a greater impact than maybe $1 million tax cut, their score, they weren't able to get as high of a score.
Well,
so
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's not surprising to me, Josh, and the reason it isn't is because when I sat down and I started scheduling an impression of the session, I interviewed as many as I could, but the first people that I invited to be on the show were those that consistently voted against all three of what I think the major revenue takers, which was the internet sales tax, the gas tax increase, and then the half-cent sales tax extension, preventing it from sunsetting. That's a lot of money. So I wanted to know which Republicans consistently voted against all three of those. And there weren't many, but I think I can't remember what the number was, 12 or 14 or something like that. Then I attempted to do that in the Senate on the same three-piece legislation, and you couldn't. There wasn't one senator that voted no on all three of those revenue takers. And I feel like that's the reason you have such a lopsided Senate versus House ranking system.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Like we talked about, the impact of a bill is what's most important. If you were to just, turn, like in school, if you're just to turn in a 5-question homework assignment, really easy, you can use your book. It's just not that big of a deal. But if that final's coming and it's everything, from the semester, and that's the big test, right? The big test. So think about it this way. The big test for these tax bills. If you voted for the tax increases and those were the greatest weight, it's hard to overcome that even if you vote well, on a lot of other bills. Just those three main bills, Paul, you mentioned, if you voted for all those tax increases, I don't think there's any way you were going to be able to receive the Calvin Coolidge Award because you're voting for hundreds of millions of dollars in tax increases.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, and that's the thing. How many people did I ask? Like, so at the end of the day, are the people going to be paying more or less? And most people said, yeah, people are going to be paying more. I was like, okay, well, I mean, I'm really thrilled at the honesty that we got. People just, saying, yeah, because, at some point, it's math, and that's not going to lie,
Yep.
Let's see. Then scrolling down here, we've got the House scorecard rankings. Obviously, there's a lot. I think, there was a lot more House members. The cutoff was not as steep. You know what I mean? When it comes to the people that fall below 80, and then it just kind of drops off there. There was a little bit more people in the 70 percentile than in the Senate as well. But I think you see that sometimes. I think you see, and I see a lot of hope in the House of Representatives, just in terms of the people that are, standing up for conservatism, and there's really a lot of gains to be made there. Where there may be a future in Arkansas politics where the House of Representatives, is the conservative wall, if you will, to stop the growth of government.
Yeah, Paul, one of the major bills that was, scored in the Senate that didn't end up on the House floor because it was stopped in committee was the 100 million cigarette tax increase, vape tax increase bill to fund a EITC.
Yeah.
That didn't even get on the Senate floor. And so I think you're right. You see, kind of the cream of the crop rise, and based on this 80% rule, the vast majority of legislators that met that standard were in the House of Representatives. So, I think kudos to them. These are the legislators we want to look at as examples of their voting record.
Let's talk real quick. I want to get to the bills that were scored here in a minute, but can we talk about some of the Republicans at the bottom of this list, Josh?
Sure.
And I'm trying to see here. Do we have any Democrats better than Republicans? Looks like we do. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll kind of start at the top there, Paul. As we mentioned already, Trent Garner, he was first in the Senate. And then second in the Senate was Bob Ballinger with the 77.6%. Third was Bart Hester, the 77.1%. Fourth was Scott Flippo, the 76.9%. And rounding out the top five was State Senator Kim Hammer with the 66.2%. And so, that's your top five in the Senate.
Yeah, and then you look at towards the bottom of the list. Interesting. I guess out of the 35, the very last, Stephanie Flowers, Democrat Stephanie Flowers.
Yeah, I don't think that's really a surprise to most people. I was thinking, Paul, on a conservative organization scorecard, do Democrats do they see that as an award? Do they have kind of like their own internal award system? Hey, if you get last on Conduit scorecard, you get I don't know, some type of liberal progressive of the year award.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because the bottom three, 33, 34, 35 are Will Bond, Keith Ingram, and Stephanie Flowers. No, and then you got Joyce Elliott. But then you got Republicans. Yeah. Let's see. Coming in at 30 is Jim Hendren, who is the president pro tem. He got a 32.9%, and the only Republican scored worse than him was Matthew Pitch. So that's it. That's not surprising to see Jim so low on the list, considering he's the leading guy on policy. I mean, he's the guy that's pushing for the policies of these tax increases that we saw during session. So, and like you said, it's great if you have $1 million tax cut, but that's not going to be weighted as high as a $300 million tax increase. We're talking with Josh Waters, going over this Conduit scorecard. We're going to take a break. Josh, hold the line with us, and we're going to get into this. We got Josh for the full hour, 870-275-9799. Back in just a moment.
The Department of Justice, and all this information they're collecting with an already discredited source on the front end. This guy, Christopher Steele, had been he'd been removed as an FBI informant for unreliable information. But he was good enough to go and conjure up this crazy story that allegedly took place in Russia involving Donald Trump. This was just a contrived commissioned by Hillary Clinton, carried out by agents of the federal government to help her campaign. And then you've got the temerity to stand there and ask George Stephanopoulos to stand there and ask the president, would he look at information coming from a foreign source? Give me a break.
What about the FISA judge or the judges? Do you think that they believe they've been lied to? And there was some accusation, I think, a couple weeks ago, Joe DeGeneva saying that the judge has already referred this to the higher-ups, saying that they believe they were lied to when it comes to, the FISA application.
Hey, folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever miss the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your number one source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so we have Mr. Josh Waters is back with us. Josh, so glad that you're here. One more thing on the Senate end of this scorecard. The Conduit for Commerce scorecard, by the way, is out. If you want to check it out, a reflection of what happened in the 92nd General Assembly. We'll get to the bill scored here in a moment. Number 11th on the Senate side is Democrat Larry Teague. So you've got a Democrat kind of in the middle of these Republicans here coming in at number 11. That's not bad for a Democrat.
Yeah, you see overall the top, what look like 20, 21 are all Republicans, and then Larry Teague's kind of in there in the middle at number 11. So it just shows you, you can't just go by party every time. It's, you see at the very bottom of the Senate and the House, it's most all Democrats. But kudos to Larry Teague. Now he was 11th, but the score was a 59.6%
out of 100.
The best score, yeah,
not a great
not the best score,
yeah.
But 11 out of 35.
Yeah, the bar. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Okay, real quick, moving on to the House. I kind of already mentioned these names. But, again, going with the 80% rule, that's 14 people getting 80% or above from the House, and these are all Republicans. Josh?
Yeah. Like we were talking about before, a lot of people will say, well, you can't agree 100% of the time, or, if you're, don't let, what do they say, don't let perfect get in the way of good, and so Ronald Reagan always had that quote, if you agree with me 80% of the time. So you got an 80% or higher, you're kind of recognized as a top fiscal conservative and receive a Calvin Coolidge Award. So
on the House side, you have these Democrats I'm seeing here. I guess Democrat Andrew Collins from District 35. He's probably like, yes, I'm the best Democrat there is. I'm dead last on the Conduit for Commerce score. I'm dead last. Yeah. I'm number 100. Runner-ups, Reginald Murdoch, David Whittaker, Nicole Clowney, Tippy McCullough, Jamie Scott, Vivian Flowers, Deborah Ferguson, Monty Hodges, Denise Gardner, Fred Love. Anyway, a lot of Democrats there at the bottom. But then you got the Republican like Lee Johnson, who has a worse score than the minority leader of the Democrat Party, Charles Blake. So, there's certainly interesting fodder there for some. I'm sure. We're talking with Josh Waters. Josh, hold on the line. Let's get to the bills that were scored when we come back. Again, a reflection of the 92nd General Assembly. And you can go check out how your legislator did on economic freedom issues. Again, this is only a scorecard that has to do with economic freedom. tax policy, and that sort of thing. You can check it out, conduitforcommerce.org. Back in just a moment.
Information that we know and that I've seen and I've had access to, then they need to be removed from the bench. And there's a whole lot of people that don't really understand the construct of the FISA court and how that works. But that has to be reformed, and it has to be reformed soon, because we can't have a repeat of this type of thing. And the reason that this was, you can't have the sort of, coffee shop relationship with these FISA judges. And there's a rotation with these judges. It's not as though they sit in this, stiff, in the basement of the Supreme Court and wait for people to come in and ask for warrants. There's a process by which these warrants are presented, and the request is made, and the information is reviewed. And it's kind of almost like a circuit court where you've got, different judges in a rotation, different kinds of judges that have expertise in this area, and they do a rotation to hear these cases and requests for warrants. And if they don't have fulsome information, they're probably going to make bad choices. And so these people know it. People like Andrew McCabe, they know it. They know that they can go in there and manipulate these judges, which is why there needs to be two things that have to happen in these FISA courts, in my opinion. One of them is there has to be an adversarial agent in the room. And by that I mean some disinterested party advocating for constitutional due process, regardless of who the request is made on for the FISA warrant. Somebody on the other side needs to be present, not to say, no, you shouldn't issue that for this reason or that reason, but to make sure that he or she is hearing the argument and making sure that it's all done within the confines and the prescribed parameters of the Constitution. So that's number one. Number two, there needs to be a transcript. There needs to be a stenographer present, and that transcript needs to be made available. Should there be any irregularities that come to light, they can refer back to the transcript and say, here's what happened. And it can remain classified. I'm not suggesting that those transcripts ever see daylight, but they do need to memorialize those proceedings in a way that we can go back and reference what exactly was presented to the FISA judge. So then we can make a determination, was there an attempt to deceive the FISA judge? Without those reforms, it's going to continue to be difficult.
Yeah, and those are really good ideas, really good reforms. And I know Congressman Crawford, you did an excellent job representing the state of Arkansas, representing District 1 on this Intelligence Committee. I think somebody else who has represented the state of Arkansas very well by representing the president, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I just would love to get your comment on her exiting from the White House, and the president even urging her to come home and run for governor. But what do you think about what she's done on that national stage, representing our country, the president, and the state of Arkansas?
Well, I will tell you this, that she has raised the bar, and anybody that comes in behind her,
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome back. Hey, folks, if you're just joining us, thanks so much, first of all, for starting the beginning of your week with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Building a liberty machine. Part of that liberty machine is a mirror. It's a mirror, and it reflects back to the legislators what they've done when it comes to a liberty machine, economic freedom, lower taxes, that sort of thing. Part of the Republican Party platform, lower taxes to produce economic growth, that sort of thing. And again, we know what happened. We know they raised taxes on the people to pay for things like roads, and we know their arguments, what they were. We got to have roads to have a good economy. But the problem is they took your money without finding any savings. I mean, there wasn't even a discussion about, hey, well, what if we didn't do this anymore and use the money we're spending on this thing that we aren't going to do anymore and put it towards roads? There was no discussion of that whatsoever. And so, anyway, we're here with Josh Waters. Josh, thanks so much, sir. It's always great to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Paul.
All right, so let's get to the last half of this scorecard. Kind of went over the first half. Some of the bills that were scored in getting these legislators their individual rankings. We can start right at the top of the top of the page there. HJR, a House Joint Resolution 1008. What can you tell us about that one?
Yeah. So with all these bills, Paul, like we talked about, not every bill is created equal. Not every homework assignment you got in school is created equal. So the kind of overall impact of a bill is what determines the weight of that bill. So on these pages, you'll see what each bill is, a description of the bill, who sponsored it, the result of that bill. Did it ultimately pass? And then the weight of that bill. And that ties into those percentage scores we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So HJR 1008 was one of the 3 proposed constitutional amendments. And, just simplifying it down, basically it's going to make it harder for citizen initiatives to pass. It's raising the threshold of how many counties you have to get signatures in. You have to submit it a little sooner than you had to before. So this will be on the 2020 ballot, but it was a bill that Conduit for Commerce has opposed in the scorecard. And, that had a weight of 3, though. So it wasn't a, if you look at the next, go ahead.
That's why I brought it up first, because I want people to see that this only has a weight of 3. So it was an opposed bill. So if you voted for it, you didn't get the 3 points. If you voted against it, you did get 3 points. So 3 out of 3. It's like, think of a quiz that was worth 3 points in school. But you go right to the one underneath it. You have a weight of 14 on HJR 1018, which is the $293 million sales tax increase. So obviously that's why it's weighted with 14 possible points. And that was by State Representative Jeff Wardlaw, who sponsored that.
Yep. And that's exactly right, Paul. This price tag was actually the largest single price tag of the bill. And so this was the highest weighted bill, was this $293 million per year sales tax increase they're trying to enshrine in the Constitution. So the people will get to vote on this, but the legislators had their say. They put their stamp of approval out there. They put their name in their voting record on this bill, and they're weighed accordingly. So as people might know, there's currently a half-cent sales tax in place to help fund roads. And if the legislature would have done nothing, that would have gone away. So this is a new replacement of a half-cent sales tax. To enshrine in the Constitution, $293 million a year.
And I have to say, if they would have just done nothing and are allowing this thing to sunset, they'd be able to say, hey, this is $293 million. I know it's already in the law that it's going to go away, but here's $200-something million going back to the people of Arkansas. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that can get you reelected, by telling people that, you're keeping way more of your money because of the legislature's inaction. But they couldn't help themselves. So let's go to the next page here. This was a bill that was weighted a little heavier, a weight of 7 points. And this was State Representative John Payton's bill, which would have been a sales tax cut on used vehicles.
Yeah, this. I know you've had Representative Payton on to talk about this bill, and he talked about it in the impression of the session, and it was a clean, straightforward bill that would help shrink the size of government and provide much-needed tax relief to people who are out there trying to buy a used vehicle. And it would raise the sales tax exemption on used cars for $7,500. And so this would have been the right and legal way to do this, and not the Jeremy Hutchinson way. If you just put what you want on sale with it. But anyways, I'm getting a little off topic, but I can't help but think of that now on the bill like this. So.
Yeah, me too. That was a very interesting news week last week for Jeremy. Let's go to this one, HB 1564. Now, this only had a weight of 5 points, but it did increase people's cell phone bills. And I just want people to understand that you pay a cell phone tax. It's on, and now you're paying more of that. And this was by State Representative Michelle Gray. Yeah.
So, this is one of those bills. It was a fee increase, fee tax, kind of splitting hairs. People be paying more. But, this money did go to be used for 911 systems. So I think a lot of people would, say, just based off that, yeah, we should have this or that kind of thing. So all that's taken into consideration, Paul. when we talked about the sales tax increase, $293 million, that's a huge number compared to here, $10.1 million here. So that's significant.
Mm-hmm.
But then also here, maybe, it's a little lower weight because, the purpose seems, a little more legitimate.
Yeah.
But it is an opposed, it is a fee increase. There's no restructuring of incoming money already.
Yeah.
So, but that's where that bill came out.
Yeah, and I think that's totally reasonable. Again, $293 million increase, it's worth 14. $10.1 million increase, it's worth 5. Now, hey, I wish we weren't even talking about increases because we remember we have a supermajority Republican legislature, but we're still talking about, this kind of stuff. Let's go ahead and go to, what do we think here? Let's go to the, I want to find a, well, here's a 9. This is pretty high. HB 1565. Which was an increase in cigarette paper taxes and raising the smoking age to 21. And this is a national movement now where they're trying to get the smoking age raised to 21. And I believe this passed, didn't it, Josh?
Yes, it did. And after Arkansas, now there's an exemption for those in the military, but I think there might be a phase-in of this too. But, the smoking age raising to 21. And so they also increased the cigarette paper taxes. The way this fiscal impact statement came out was really weird because they say, okay, this is how much more is going to come in from cigarette paper tax increase. But then there was, well, we think it's going to decrease some too because people won't smoke as much, because of the age increase, because of the increased cigarette paper tax. So it's kind of a moving target on the exact number there. But, at the end of the day, Paul, someone, freedom and just general liberty to go out and buy a cigarette at 18 if they wanted to is gone. The government has come in and said, no, you may not buy that otherwise legal product at 18. You now have to be 21. So that's a big issue when the government starts coming in and affecting people's individual liberty on what products they can buy.
Yeah. I mean, you get to stay on your parents' insurance till you're 26. I mean, why not make the legal smoking age 27? I mean, you can always make an argument. It's just, it's like, it's just so frustrating. We get it. Smoking's bad for you. Everybody knows smoking's bad for you, but people still continue to smoke. I mean, can we just get over that and move on? It's ridiculous. Okay, next up, we're talking with Josh Waters, by the way. We're going over the Conduit for Commerce scorecard. You can check it out at Conduit for Commerce. Let's see. Look at this real quick. This is interesting. A 2.5 weight by Dan Douglas's bill to increase water fees. I mean, we didn't talk about this hardly at all on the show, but it was signed into law, Act 788. So you got more fee increases, but it was only weighted, 2.5.
Yeah, that is what it is. It's a fee increase, but, relatively small, so relatively small weight. I think this actually might have been the lowest weighted bill, maybe, on the scorecard. So kind of speaks for itself. It's a fee increase on public water systems and had a weight of 2.5. So overall, it was weighted, you could get 2.5 more points or lose 2.5 points. So, there can't be an argument that, well, I didn't do well on the scorecard because I had to vote for our local water district to get, a little more money to operate.
Yeah.
That's not what kept people from getting the Coolidge Award.
So here we go. Let's get to the big one here. We have a support bill. This was SB 211 by Senator Jonathan Dismang. This was a straight tax cut, eventually bringing the 6.9% top rate down to 5.9% over the next few years. It was weighted as a 12 because it was a good bill.
Yeah, this was a great bill. This was a clean tax cut bill, and I think that was what was so great, and I wish more bills were styled this way, that, hey, here's a straight tax cut, and then bills that are just straight tax increases, let's not, throw in this, throw in that, and confuse everyone and claim it's revenue neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a straight tax cut bill, $97 million per year once fully phased in, so that got a 12, a very significant weight. And this is a bill that really distinguished a lot of, Republicans from Democrats. A lot of Democrats did not vote for this bill.
Yeah.
And so they were hurt. Their overall score was hurt significantly because this is one of the highest weighted bills in the entire scorecard.
I like things to be simple, so this was it was early on in the session, but this was my favorite part of the session because it was simple. You had the Republicans in the tax cut camp. You had the Democrats in the class warfare tax hike camp. And I really liked that because the arguments the Democrats made were class warfare. The wealthy are somehow they don't need any of this, and then the Republicans were like, we need business owners to, hire more people, and it was really, really refreshing in a super majority Republican legislature to just have a standalone tax cut bill. Now the problem is what comes next. We already covered the sales tax increase, and then of course you got to SB 336 by Senator Terry Rice, which was a gas tax increase, almost taking exactly the same amount back from the people that they cut. Now keep in mind they didn't actually cut because that 6.9 doesn't go to 5.9 for several years or for a few years. This gas tax increase is going to start in October 1st of this year. So what can you tell us about this bill? It was weighted a 13.
Yeah, so this is the gas tax straight tax increase that would raise the tax rate to essentially. So what they did to get around the constitutional amendment for needing 75% vote, they put it at the wholesale level, but essentially it converts to per gallon, kind of where we're at, raises that to about 24.4 cents a gallon, and diesel will be 28.5 cents a gallon. So that was an increase of 3 cents a gallon regular and about 6 cents a gallon diesel. They also add these new registration fees, $100 if you have a hybrid vehicle, $100 every year, $200 every year for electric vehicles. And then this bill would also direct, once some of the casino revenue comes in, direct some of that to roads. So overall, a tax increase. One other thing about this bill is it triggers, an ongoing small increase every year. And so there's a guaranteed, small, but a guaranteed small tax increase every year built in.
Yeah. Then the next one weighted a 12, which is another big amount of points that you could get, and this was a $100 million tax increase for redistribution of wealth program by Senator Jim Hendren. Is this the EITC? I couldn't believe we had a Republican leader having press conferences with Democrats.
Yeah, this was really one of the more baffling bills of the entire session. The fact that it made it through the Senate was, staggering. And like we talked about earlier, this didn't get on the House floor. It didn't even make it there. Paul, this EITC idea, earlier this session, it was tried by Democrat Tippy McCullough, who was, we just talked about it, I think, in the bottom 5 in the entire scorecard. She ran a standalone EITC bill, and that thing got, I think, 2 votes in the House Rev and Tax Committee. When you look back at 2017, an EITC bill actually made it to the House floor. And that thing got, I think, 4 or 5 Republican votes. So this was really weird because it was an EITC, and it was funded for with a huge tax increase on cigarette and a new huge tax increase on vaping that was going to close small business vape shops. So just a terrible policy really all around. So it had, a weight of 12, and it passed in the Senate, but then failed in the House committee.
We're talking with Josh Waters. You guys can check this out. I mean, you need to. It's up at conduitforcommerce.org. And it's the scorecard, 92nd General Assembly release. So you've got legislative rankings as well as the methodology, as well as the bills that were scored. And the last bill that I'll talk about here is SB 576. This was, one of the big 3 by Senator Bart Hester. Josh, what can you tell us about this? Remind us about this, and what was the weight on this one?
Yeah, so like we've been talking about, not all bills are created the same. There's some good things in this bill. There's some good corporate tax reform in this bill. But there's huge internet tax on this. There's car wash piece that never really made much sense. But so overall, this was a weight of 8. Paul, I was looking this weekend, and Spotify just sent out an email to their customers saying, hey, starting July 1, your bill's going to go up to $1.75 a month. It's like a 10 or 20% price increase.
I saw that.
And I think you're going to see that. This is just a few weeks away. This isn't just a, level the playing field. This is a new internet tax 2.0 on all these internet sales, on all these third-party sellers. This Spotify is just a subscription service. You're just, month to month, basically leasing access to these songs. And so there's no telling how much money this thing's really going to
I agree. Listen to this. This is Hi. This is from Spotify. Hi. We're getting in touch to let you know about an upcoming change to your Spotify subscription. Starting July 1st, 2019, we're required to apply Arkansas sales tax to your monthly Spotify subscription payments. You don't need to do anything to accept the new price. The change will happen automatically. Your payment will be increased by no more than $1.75 per month, depending on your Spotify subscription plan. Josh, you're right. It's going to be insane how much money the government's going to get from this, because it all of a sudden hit me. I'm on a budget, obviously, like most people are on a budget, and you look at your numbers and you say, okay, this much for internet, this much for Netflix, this much for something like Spotify or whatever, whatever you're using to stream. I don't have cable. And now all of a sudden, we're going to apply state and local sales tax to your Netflix subscription. I mean, there was a time when Republicans were outraged when Chicago started doing this. Remember, this was an idea, specifically Netflix, came out of Cook County, Illinois, and everybody was upset about it. And now here we are adopting the same policy, fleecing the taxpayer more and more. Well, where we also have local communities trying to raise taxes even more. And it's just like, how much is enough? I understand why Senator Hester had to put the corporate tax reform in there as well in order to get people to vote for it. But the bottom line is this. Most of us don't have corporations that are going to get these tax breaks. But every one of us are purchasing things online and going to pay the tax. And that's very frustrating.
Yeah, Paul, like you said, you might have a budget of all these different things you're subscribed to or you buy online per month. That's maybe $50, $100, $200. If you multiply that by 10 to 12, 15% on everything every month, you're going to be paying more. Not only is that a huge amount of money more going to the government, that's straight out of Arkansans' pockets. This isn't some, company in Washington or wherever, getting a tax break or whatever. These are Arkansans that are be paying this taxes. So that bill, there's some good in it, but a lot really bad. So it got a weight of 8.
Yeah. Well, Josh, kind of recapping here, folks, is the Conduit for Commerce scorecard. You can check it out. You can look at the methodology. You can look at the economic freedom filter. Josh, one more time, go over that economic freedom filter so people know what this is supposed to encompass. Again, this is not a scorecard based on social issues. This is a scorecard based on economic issues.
That's right. Economic freedom, and really we can boil that down to, is government getting more money or less money? But specifically, there's 4 points to this economic freedom filter. 1, does a bill increase or decrease the size and scope of government? 2, does it increase or decrease dependency on government? 3, does it spend money we do not have? And 4, does it increase or decrease transparency in government? So if people are just tuning in, I would encourage everyone to go to conduitforcommerce.org. This scorecard we've been talking about it all hour, Paul, how it's, basically like a grading system you would have in school. You take the total points possible, divide it, or the total points someone gets, divide it by the total points possible, and you get their percentage score based on all these bills that fit within that economic freedom filter.
Yeah.
So it's a really clear picture of kind of the full session, the full voting record.
It really is. Josh Waters, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for being on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, enjoyed it, Paul. Have a good one.
All righty, you too. Folks, this scorecard is a tool, and you can use it. You can use it because I know many of you out there are friends with your legislators, and I know many of you out there like your legislator personally. Like you think that they're good people, and they are. But you can use this as a tool, and you can use this to say, man, I didn't realize you voted, for this particular tax increase. I really disagree with you on it because I don't think more money needs to come from the people. I don't think you need to vote this way next time. Like, I think you need to vote for tax decreases, or don't vote at all, you know? If anything, just leave the tax structure where it is. But yeah, so use it as a tool and look at some of these bills that are obscure that you don't even know were ran. I mean, they're weighted very low, but they're also significant in that it can give you an insight into the philosophy of your legislator, and maybe there's some encouragement that you can do to them. Be like, hey, this really was a growth in government. I know it was a small amount of money, but come on, man, let's not grow government at all. That's the mentality shift that has to happen right now. The mentality shift in a supermajority Republican legislature is an acceptance that government will grow. They accept it, and the conversation and debate that is had is, well, how much are we going to let it grow? When the conversation should be, it's not going to grow. Our debate is, do we leave it the same size or do we shrink it? That's what the debate should be. You're listening to Conduit News. We're going to take a break. You can get the scorecard right now at conduitforcommerce.org. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
I would not want to be that person because she's done such a formidable job in engaging in hand-to-hand combat with a very hostile media establishment. And she, day in and day out, just the composure, the poise, the quick wit, all of those things that we've probably never seen to the degree that we've seen it with her. And she really kind of, I think, has set the standard for what any White House spokesperson would aspire to. And so that's going to be a loss for the Trump administration, but this is a naturally occurring phenomenon in that the burnout for that type of job, quite frankly, I'm surprised she stayed as long as she did because of the 24/7, you're on call all the time. She's got small children at home. She's got a husband, and she's a family woman. It was a major sacrifice on her
Need your
part.
daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I think you're right about that. Definitely a contender. Congressman Rick Crawford. All right, we've gone way over. We are out of time for today, which means, and we don't even have time to get to the meme of the day and explain it. So 2 memes of the day tomorrow. We'll do one in the beginning, of the show, we will make up for this, and then because I like the one that Joe's got, it's pretty good, and it'll really go good with a national news segment. And then we'll get you another one as well. So, folks, that's all the time. Happy Monday. Go to Conduit for Commerce again for the scorecard. It's out, and we really appreciate you guys listening. And please continue your thoughts and your prayers for the family of Senator Linda Collins. Arkansas, have a great Monday. Be safe.